Hello everyone, and welcome to part 1 of this video of how to make a cam toy out of paper or card materials. Now, as for materials, I'm going to make my cam toy out of cardstock, colored cardstock. I have red, green, and white. And for decoration, I'm going to be using just colored paper. Now, obviously, paper is thinner than cardstock. We're going to be using cardstock to make our cam toy, so our cam toy would be much more stable and rigid. Okay, so in order to make this project, you're going to need a cutting mat, some PVA glue, a pair of scissors, a craft knife, a glue stick. You are also going to be needing a safety ruler, and a pencil. Before we start, make sure that you have both patterns in front of you. These are available in the Instructables link down below in the description. As you can see, the pattern on the right is going to help us make the frame of our cam toy, and the pattern on the left is going to help us create the mechanism of our toy. Okay, now we can start. Now, first things first, we're going to start by cutting each part of our cam toy from the printed patterns. Now, of course, I'm going to do this behind the scenes. There you go, all parts are cut now. Now, the part labeled gusset, that diagonal line in the middle, has to be cut as well. However, we're going to do that later on at a later stage. On to the next step. Now let's start sticking each part to our cardstock or construction paper, or whatever kind of paper you're going to be using to make your cam toy. I'm going to use red and green cardstock or construction paper. Now let's start placing each part onto the proper material. When placing each part on the cardstock, it's important to refer to the chosen idea sketch, so you would know what color each part is going to have. Also, please remember that when placing each part on the cardstock, it's important when you have a part with a straight edge, it's important to place it on the straight edge of your cardstock. This way you would not waste. Now, let's speed things up a little bit. Okay, now let's start gluing each part on the cardstock. Okay, now let's apply the glue to each part. When applying glue stick, please do not apply a lot of pressure. Otherwise, you would end up with large pieces of glue behind your part, and then it will make your part all lumpy and not suitable to be cut afterwards. The same goes for the type of glue you're going to be using. Please use only glue stick for this stage and not PVA glue. Okay, that's each part glued in place. Now let's recut these pieces by using a pair of scissors. Now at this stage, you may separate the two gussets from each other by cutting them from the diagonal line using a pair of scissors. Do this for the other gussets. Now, in order to make this project, you're going to need 2 covers. Okay, so 2 parts labeled cover. Now, unfortunately, I didn't have enough space in the patterns, so we're going to need to create a new part labeled cover. Okay, we're going to do this by tracing the outline of this part on cardstock. I'm going to trace this part on white cardstock in this case. Now let's cut it like we did with the other parts. And let's label this part as cover 2. And the next step, we're going to be cutting the holes of the following parts. To not scratch any surfaces, I'm going to be using a cutting mat. And the first part we're going to be cutting is side 2. Let's start with this one. And to cut that circular hole on side 2, I'm going to be using a craft knife. Now let's take a little bit of the blade out. This should be enough. Now, to protect myself from being cut, I'm going to be using a safety ruler rather than a regular ruler because it has that groove in the middle. So, I'm going to show you how to cut the circular hole marked on part side 2. I'm going to first start by cutting the vertical and horizontal line, and then the curved line afterwards. So let's start by cutting the inner vertical line. Keep your fingers inside the groove of the safety ruler. Never put your fingers outside, keep them always inside the groove. Now, let's start. Apply a bit of pressure on the edge of the ruler with the craft knife and start cutting. Okay, let's see the cut. So once finished, let's do the horizontal line. Again, rest your craft knife on the edge of the ruler and cut. Okay, that's both lines cut. Now let's start cutting the curved line. So let's start from this part. Cut a little bit with the craft knife, turn the paper, and then cut. Turn the paper again and cut a little bit more. And there you have it, the first quarter of that circular hole is cut. Now let's cut the rest. Cut a little bit, turn, and cut a little bit. You might want to go through it one more time, just in case you have missed some parts. Okay, that's half done. The other one. Please always keep your fingers away from the blade. Okay, side 2 is finished. That's our first hole cut with the craft knife. Now I'm going to show you how to cut the square hole on the part labeled top. So let's rest the safety ruler on the edge of the square hole. Rest our craft knife on the edge of the ruler and then cut. That's one line down. Always remember to keep your fingers inside the groove of the safety ruler. Okay, final line. Now let's see if it removes. Okay, when you're in this position right here where the paper is not detached, please do not tear it, just go through it again with the craft knife until it removes neatly. Alright, now I'm going to show you how to cut the hole on the part labeled cam. Now on this part, I'm only going to cut those diagonal lines over there. So let's rest the safety ruler on the diagonal lines. And then let's cut them with the craft knife. Always keep your fingers inside the groove of the safety ruler. Right, let's do the other diagonal line. Alright, now insert a pencil to bend those 4 triangles to go outwards. Now let's bend them like this with our fingers as I'm showing you here. Like that. Remove one and fold it. There you go. And that's how to cut the hole on the cam. Okay, you have these 4 triangles pointing outwards. And the rest you basically do the same thing as we did before. Alright, this step is optional. You could skip it. What I'm going to do is to cover the white side of these parts labeled side 2, side 1, top and base with a green colored paper. This is so the inside of my cam toy will not be white. And you stick the parts like this by applying glue to the white side of your part. Make sure that you apply glue in all of the areas. Don't leave any areas blank, please. And stick the white side of the part to the green paper or whatever color of your choice. Do the same with the other pieces. Now, the same as we did in the beginning, cut around each part. And when you're done cutting them, then it would be time to recut the holes of your parts one more time. So I'm going to freehand the circles, cut a little bit and turn, cut a little bit and turn, cut a little bit and turn. Keep going with the same process. And remember to keep your fingers away from the craft knife's blade. Now do the same with the others. You could also freehand the square's hole as well. And that is all the parts finished. Now they're covered from both the outside and the inside. Now on to the next step. In the next step, we're going to assemble the frame of our chem toy, the bottom frame. Before we assemble our frame, we're going to score the fold lines marked on each part. We're going to take the gusset parts and then score those lines either with a pencil by forming a crease or scoring them by using the sharp tip of a pair of scissors. Now, please, rather than using a regular ruler, please use a safety ruler for this activity. So please continue by scoring each fold line of each gusset by using the tip of your scissors and by using a safety ruler. Alright, let's speed things up. Now to assemble the gussets with our frame parts, we're going to be using PVA glue. Let's remove the cap and get started. Okay, now in this step we're going to be attaching the part labeled base to the part labeled side 1 or side 2. It doesn't make a difference as both parts are the same. Now in my case, the lighter parts are going to be on the inside and the darker sides are going to be on the outside. Now let's take one gusset. And we are going to be attaching the gussets in this way by having the flaps on the inside of our chem toy. Okay, now let's twist open our PVA glue and apply a dot of glue on the flap of our gusset. Now let's spread that glue all over that area. You could either use your finger to do this or a piece of paper to avoid getting your fingers dirty with glue. Let's do the other flap. Now I'm going to show you how to spread the glue on the flap area with a piece of paper. Now the advantage of using a piece of paper is that it removes the excess glue from the part. Now if you have extra glue seeping out of the flap, please remove it with your finger. Now let's stick it to our base, one side or one flap in this case to our base and the other flap to side 1 or side 2. Hold them with your hands until the glue dries or grips the paper. And there you have it. One corner is finished and connected. Let's do the other side. Alright, now let's connect the other side. Grab another gusset, another part labeled gusset, and spread the glue with a piece of paper. Now let's continue with the same procedure. Alright, now the bottom part of our frame is finished. Now let's attach the top. Alright, same method. Grab another gusset, apply glue to both flaps. And attach it on the other side of the top part. Okay, let's attach it to side 1 or side 2. Alright. Hold it with your hands until the glue starts to grip. The glue starts to make a grip with the paper. Alright, now let's attach the gussets on the last corner of our frame. And then we'll be done. On to the next part. Now let's grab the part labeled shaft. And let's score those fold lines the same as we did with the gussets. Let's score them by using a safety ruler rather than a regular ruler. And the tip of your scissors. The reason why we're scoring the lines is to make the paper more easier for us to fold later on. Okay, now go ahead and score the other fold lines. Now let's start folding. Remember to also score the lines underneath the triangular flaps. And bend them slightly inwards. However, you have to keep them outwards, pointing outwards of your shaft. Let's score the other triangular flaps on the other side. And again, bend them inwards, however, leave them pointing outwards. Now let's fold this net of a shaft to produce our solid shape of a shaft. Now, let's apply glue to the flap. Same as we did with the gussets. Just apply a dollop of glue, one on the side, one on the center, and one on the other side. And then spread out the glue with a piece of paper, as I'm showing you here. Now fold the flap inwards. and attach one side to the flap so they would stick. Now hold the shaft's net together until the glue starts to make a grip or dry down. Okay, until you have like a solid shape. Okay, that has dried down firmly. That's our finished shaft. Now let's move on to the other part. The next part that we're going to assemble is the handle. So let's start scoring those fold lines. And later we'll score also the line underneath the triangular flaps. So let's do the same. Grab the tip of your scissors. Use always a safety ruler to help you guide you while scoring the lines with the tip of the scissors. And you don't have to press as hard with the scissors. All you need to do is just a light scratch on the paper. And there you have it. Now let's score the line underneath the triangular flaps. And then we'll start to fold. Again, let's apply PVA glue to the flap of the handle. Spread out the glue with a piece of paper. And then stick the flap to one side. Well, actually it's the side opposite to the flap. There you go. Keep hold of it until the glue starts to grip and dries down. There you have it. If there's any excess glue, please wipe it up with your finger. And there you go. The handle is assembled. Now let's move on to the follower. And we'll do the same thing as we did before. We'll start to score the fold lines on the follower. Now let's start folding. Apply glue, dollops of glue, dots of glue to the flap. Spread it out with a piece of paper and then stick the flap to the opposite side. Always stick the flap underneath the side. You don't want the flap to show. Now hold the follower until it dries down. Now let's move on to the sleeve. Let's score all the fold lines of the sleeve. Let's not forget to score the line underneath the triangular flaps. Now fold all the sides inwards, including the flaps. Now, in the case of the sleeve, bend the triangular flaps outwards. Now again, apply glue to the main flap of the sleeve. Spread the glue with a piece of paper. And then stick the flap to the opposite side, always underneath the last side. And make sure that the follower slides through the sleeve. And there you have it, the sleeve is finished. Always keep those triangular flaps pointing outwards. Now it's time to assemble the sleeve to our built frame. So open up those triangular flaps. And the sleeve should go underneath that square hole located on the top of your frame. Now let's apply glue to those triangular flaps. Spread them with a piece of paper and then stick it under the part labeled top. Alright, let's stick it under the part labeled top. Be careful to where you're sticking the part. And keep holding it until the glue dries a little bit. Okay, there we have the finished assembled sleeve. Now it's time to assemble the flat follower. We'll take our flat follower's shaft and the part labeled flat follower. Now insert the follower shaft through the part labeled flat follower, as I'm doing here. Then bend the triangular flaps outwards and stick them onto the flat follower. Alright, now let's apply some PVA glue. And then stick the triangular flaps onto the flat follower, as I'm doing here. Keep pressing the triangular flaps downwards until the glue dries and grips the paper. Alright, now let's cover the flat follower with the part labeled flat follower 2. Now apply PVA glue where necessary and then spread it with a piece of paper. Then cover the flat follower with flat follower 2. Press them together until they stick firmly to each other. In the next step, we're going to be attaching the shaft and handle part to the part labeled crank. Now, the theme for my project is going to be Christmas, so I'm going to go behind the scenes and decorate the shaft and the handle, so I will be right back in a moment. Okay, now that's the handle and shaft decorated to look like a candy cane. Now let's start attaching them to our crank. So, alright, now let's attach the handle to the outer square hole of our crank. Place the handle through the square hole. And then apply PVA glue to the triangular flaps. Then spread the PVA glue with a piece of paper. There you go. Now bend the flaps until they touch the surface of the crank. Hold them in place until the glue dries and grips the paper. I'm going to use a piece of paper and press the handle and the crank downwards. Alright, that has attached. Now let's place the shaft through the central square hole of the crank. And obviously we're going to place it on the other side, the white side. Now, bend the triangular flaps outwards, place some PVA glue, spread the glue with a piece of paper, and then apply pressure. Bend them outwards until they touch the surface of the crank. Apply pressure until the glue dries and sticks to the surface of the crank. Now that is our finished crank. Now let's cover that hole created by the shaft. And we're going to cover that by using our new part called cover 2. So let's apply glue to cover 2. Then spread it all over the area with a piece of paper. And then stick it onto your crank. And then apply pressure. Until the glue dries and the cover is flatly attached to the crank. Now let's place, first of all, our follower through the sleeve. Keep it up there. Now let's place our crank with the shaft. Place this halfway inside the frame. Now it's time to place our cam through the shaft. Now carefully slide that in, otherwise you will be risking in deforming the shape of your cam or tearing the cam. When the cam is in, almost halfway, place the shaft through the other hole of side 2. Now let's hold the shaft in place by placing a stopper. Let's grab the part labeled stopper. Place the shaft through the stopper. Later bend the triangular flaps outwards and then apply PVA glue under them. Then place the flaps, bend the flaps until they touch the stopper, the surface of the stopper. Apply pressure once more until the glue dries and grips the paper. And then cover the stopper with the part labeled cover. Okay, now let's apply glue one more time. Spread the glue with a piece of paper. Then place the cover on top of the stopper. Now let's place the cam properly to the center. Slide that to be under the flat follower. And there you have it. We have a working mechanism, a working cam mechanism.